Thomas Jefferson, who was opposed to federal judges, believed that they would turn into despots because they were unelected, believing that they had life tenure and immunity from suit. He was absolutely right. And in my new book, It Takes a Revolution, Forget the Scandal Industry, I discuss that. And I give solutions on how we can change things peacefully and legally. Not just like Hannity's book, Live Free or Die, Live Free or Lie, as I call it. Voting for Donald Trump is only going to solve things short term. And I say that personally, but they're not even going to solve things short term because he can't get anything through Congress. It's most likely we're going to have a Democrat-controlled Senate and a Democrat-controlled House of Representatives. That's the likelihood. Many more Republican senators are up for re-election than Democrats. It's likely that 3 seats will flip, and you'll have a Democrat Senate, which is why, of course, the Republicans are rushing to confirm a new Supreme Court justice. Now, I predict that the nominee is going to be Judge Laboa, a Cuban-American from Miami, a Latina, someone who is religious, someone who represented, apparently, Elian Gonzalez. I did too at the end. I represented the family, although I don't remember her at the time. But in any event, that would be a very shrewd political move for President Trump. Let the Democrats attack a female Latina from Florida. Okay, you can imagine the result. That will probably give Trump Florida in terms of electoral votes. But there's a bigger issue here, and the American people need to understand this, is that the Supreme Court is not the be-all and end-all. We've seen over the last several years, and many more than that the Supreme Court tends to vote along ideological lines, left and right. It's almost totally predictable. The same is true for federal judges. There's very little intellectual integrity in what they do. And also with Chief Justice Roberts, who has morphed into a liberal, he always was actually. Frankly, he lives in the closet. There have been rumors in Washington, D.C. for many, many years that he's a closet homosexual. I don't know if that's true or not, but from his generation, people that have to come out of the closet generally are not honest. You should at least be proud of what you are. And I'm not homophobic, but this guy has led, apparently, a secret life, and he's turned left. And what the American people need to understand is that the Constitution is the Constitution. The rule of law is the rule of law. And regardless of how the Supreme Court rules, we ourselves, as we the people, need to follow the Constitution and the law of God. They are not God up there. And there will come points in time when the American people will need to defy the rulings of the Supreme Court. They should have already done it. For instance, and I don't mean this again in a homophobic sense, but gay marriage, okay, that is not in the Constitution. And that explains why certain judges, such as my client, Judge Roy Moore, have opposed the implementation of that in Alabama. He didn't enjoin it. That's been a lie by the left, when he was Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. But he rightly opposed it because it's not enough for these people who are unelected, as Jefferson said, not accountable to we the people, decide how we should live our lives on their view of things, when they're so insulated. And that's why you need to purchase It Takes a Revolution, Forget the Scandal Industry. Pre-order it on Amazon.com, on BarnesandNoble.com, Books A Million, Borders.com. It's totally different. I just don't say vote for Donald Trump like Hannity does. That, it's not going to solve things to begin with. Obviously, I support him personally, not as head of a public interest group. But even if that were true, that only solves things for 4 years. And it won't solve things even for then, as I've just said. And what happens after that? The demographics of this country are changing. The radical left is about ready to assume control. The mail-in ballots, this is a gambit by the Democrats. It's a fraud. Clearly, it's a fraud to steal the election. And it's most likely that they'll succeed at doing that in any event. Republicans don't have the guts to stand up to it. Go into federal court. There are still many more Obama and Clinton Democrat judges than Republican judges. And frankly, as you read about in my book, It Takes a Revolution, Forget the Scandal Industry, the Trump judges who were rubber stamped, he didn't know who he was appointing, put forward by lobbyists at the Federalist Society, establishment Republicans, judges that have no guts, that don't stand for anything other than their own self-interest, they're not much better than the Obama and Clinton judges. That's the hard reality. No one will say this, but yours truly, Larry Klayman. I tell you the truth. I've lived in the trenches. I like Rush Limbaugh. He's a bright guy, but he spent his whole life in a radio studio. I've spent it fighting in the trenches of Washington, D.C. and throughout the country. I know what it's about. The system is stacked. The system is run by elite people who think they're smarter than the rest of the American people, left, right, and center, who think that they're untouchable. And the worst example of this are federal judges and Supreme Court justices who gave themselves immunity, if you can believe that, from suit. They're not held accountable for anything, much like prosecutors of bar associations think they're immune, and in their case, they're not. But this is the kind of thing that needs to be understood by the American people, is that we need to rise up and do it ourselves. We need to wage a new revolution, a counter-revolution, peacefully and legally. And if we do not succeed, all heck's going to break loose. And it's going to break loose in any event in the days leading up to this presidential election in November 3rd. And also, for sure, thereafter, our cities will be burning. And it's time that you also exercise your Second Amendment rights of self-defense and get ready for that. Not offensively, not to use against people, but to defend you and your family. And that's my message for today. Read about it. Read about all of this in my book, It Takes a Revolution, Forget the Scandal Industry. You can pre-order it at barnesandnoble.com, Books A Million, Borders.com, Amazon.com. Read it, digest it. It is just the start of our new American revolution. As the clarion call, as our colonialists did, our founding fathers did, to rise up, to no longer be the slaves of the yes men on the bench of the court of St. James, but for we the people must do it ourselves. It would be nice if the federal judges were the answer, if the Supreme Court was the answer, but they're not. They are the problem. They're the primary problem. They are not the solution. God bless you, your family, and God bless America, and stay safe. I'll be back tomorrow with another special podcast of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. Thank you for listening to me.
Ven a la venta Conquista el otoño de JCPenney. Aprovecha los doorbusters de jueves a domingo en la tienda y jcp.com mientras duren. Como selección de camisetas A&A y St. John's Bay para damas a $4.99. Selección de jeans Arizona para niños a $17.99. Y ahorra 25% extra con tu cupón. No olvides, tenemos entrega a tu auto sin contacto. Es rápido y fácil. Conquista el otoño con moda y ahorros en JCPenney. Ofertas válidas del 24 al 27 de septiembre. Aplican condiciones y exclusiones. Detalles en la tienda o jcp.com.